Hey everyone, it's Stephanie again, and you are tuned into the review of Family or Fiancé Season 1, Episode 8. So, this week's episode is about Summer and Keith. And I want to say that I think that this week's episode was my favorite episode. For some reason, just the family dynamics were really, really quality. I really think that this episode is really reflective of, well, several of the episodes more so, but this episode is really reflective of how people can have dissension, they can be heard, it can feel genuine and authentic, and they can move on with positive feelings. So let's just jump into it. So Summer and Keith have been dating for about 3 years now. Summer, they refer to her as the wild child. This couple's a little bit older. I don't know how old Summer is, but they did talk about Keith's age, and they said that he was 50. So a little more seasoned. And Keith has been married before. He is the widow. So his wife passed away. I don't remember when, but it was a tough experience for him, and it was a long process. So some of their family concerns on her side, her sister, her best friend, and her mother come. And then on his side, his sister, his brother-in-law, and his mother come. And so when they get together with the relationship expert, Tracy, she gives them the tasks, the 20 questions for Keith, because Keith, on their end, is a little buttoned up and guarded, so they want to get to know him. And then for Summer, they give her the task of cooking dinner, so that she can demonstrate her domesticated qualities. And some of us may be like, oh, that's not necessary now, but it just really depends on what you find important, what you want in your marriage, and that is kind of where you go from. So for Keith, that is important for him, and she wants to provide that, so that's a good way for her to display kind of how she can handle herself. They also bring up the fact that Keith has been married before and his wife passed away. So one of the concerns is that he may be moving on too quickly. They briefly touch on that with Tracy. And then they also touch on the fact that some of her family members feel that she's settling, and they want to make sure that she is happy and not kind of guarding herself. Because she's the loud and fun and wild, and he's the complete opposite. So they're kind of wondering, okay, are you settling? Is this the person for you? Because we don't really get we get a different vibe with you. So the families come, they get along really well, but as we see them spend time together, and as we see Keith spend time with Summer's family, and they ask questions, and it's going pretty well, they ask a question about, what do you think about Summer's family? And he makes a joke, and he says, oh, well, something along the lines of if dysfunctional had a name or something. And then he takes it back, and you can see that he's holding back, and he is very guarded, and he says that, and he says he does a lot of his processing internally, which is okay until you learn that you're not really processing at all. So there's a part of processing that is internal, where you kind of navigate in your own mind, but eventually you have to communicate that, otherwise you're just stuffing. So really what he was doing is stuffing his feelings rather than actually processing them in a healthy way. So he makes that joke, it doesn't go well, but they move on, and then they have dinner later on, and the best friend kind of brings that up and says, hey, we're concerned with what you said, that didn't really feel good, and what do you mean? And so he says that he grew up very differently, and he didn't really mean dysfunctional, although I do think that he did. He meant different, because his family is a family who comes from a very strong religious background, and so there's a lot of structure, a lot of rules, and he sees the polar opposite way that she was raised as dysfunctional, essentially. So the mother is offended, and she gets upset, and you see a little bit of her background saying that her mother was cold and that house wasn't warm. And so in raising her kids, she didn't want to have rules. She didn't want them to feel like she didn't love them. And so she did the polar opposite. And so that was a hurtful thing to experience on their end, and that caused a little bit of dissension. It was a difficult time for them, because you can tell that he meant it, and he even said, listen, you wanted me to communicate, and I'm communicating now, and you're not liking what I said. Now, I think that it's not necessarily what he said, but how he said it. And same way as they thought he was buttoned up and guarded and probably boring and, silencing their sister and their loved ones, he necessarily isn't that way. He just didn't show them different aspects of him. So they were able to eventually clean that up. He apologized, and it was a genuine apology about saying that and what that meant, and so on and so forth. So that they cleaned that up towards the end of the episode, and you can tell that it was a very amicable response. The other thing that he brought up was that he sent her family. So he really loves her, and I think he shows his love because he gives me like old school vibes. So he shows his love through providing, and she wanted to go to Italy, and so not only did he send her to Italy, but he sent her with her family, and so that's an expensive trip. And he was kind of frustrated that nobody said thank you, which I 100% understand. And they made excuses, the cards at home, or they forgot, but it just really showed that it doesn't necessarily make them not good people. It just really showed that maybe there's just a lack of thought there, just a lack of thoughtfulness, not with any malicious intent, but just a lack of like obvious, this is what you should do when somebody gives you something like that. So he was really frustrated with that. They talked about that. And what we see Keith do is, and this is why this process is so awesome, we see Keith be pushed and be put in a situation to have to express himself. And now he has to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and expressing himself. And that's where the dissension comes in, because now we're hearing things that we didn't hear before, and we're saying things we didn't say before. And of course people are responding, and that's affecting their relationship. And there was a lot of conversation around that, but they were able to clean it up and find their way back to each other. I mean, they didn't really leave each other, but there was a little break, and they were able to kind of like communicate that. On Summer's end, his mother's concern is that she'll make a beautiful bride, but she doesn't know what type of wife she will make. And so mom is old school, and mom was very close to the first wife, and so she's thinking, is he moving on too quickly? Has he mourned long enough? And really that's an answer that no one really has, because there is no long enough. But also his side of the family is wondering, is she loyal? We see her as this fun-loving, exciting party girl, but is she going to be there and dependable and take care of him and just be there? And is she domesticated? That's something that's really important to them, even up to the blessing. That was something the brother-in-law mentioned, like, you cooked dinner, but you didn't cook breakfast. And I was just like, okay, like, cut the girl some slack. But everybody has their own barometer of what they think is important and how they view things. And so they wanted to know, hey, is she going to be able to, be the type of wife that he needs? And is she going to, is she just someone that he fell in love with too quickly? And is this really going to work out? They want to make sure that goes as best as possible. And they find out over time that she is. The one beautiful thing about this couple is that you can really see how much they love each other. It's not hard to pick up on their dynamic, how comfortable they are with each other, how happy they are. It's a very genuine, very easy type of energy around them. And they had to work out some kinks, and that was a great thing, because that's what this whole show is about. Family or fiance, when you get married, it's not just you. It's not just you two. It's definitely a family, and the dynamics seep into your marriage. And if you're not careful, they can affect your marriage in a negative way. And so bringing up some of these issues where they may have not seen it before, because they're in their bubble, they're in their love bubble. And Keith even said that, I've known her for a long time, but I'm experiencing different aspects of her that I didn't know just in 2 days. And that's simply because they're in an environment that forces them to look in the mirror. And marriage is a mirror. I always say that marriage is a mirror. You can prep for marriage. I think there's a lot of great ways to prepare for marriage, but there are certain aspects of yourself that will only show up when you're in a marriage. And if you look in that mirror and you're authentic to the process, then you will make it work, and you will, make some changes, not to change who you are, but to be flexible and learn what works for this new life with someone and all that comes with them. So they got married a week later. The families are getting along very well, and it was really, really good to see. So I enjoyed this season. Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and I will see you guys soon on the next review. Everyone have a great day.